Hi, my name is Lauren Schwer.
Thomas Regan.
My name is Courtney Smola.
My name is Steve Nicholson.
I am Teresa Vasquez.
I am Oliver Goodrich.
I am Tala Cowie.
My name is Joe Carroll.
My name's Emma Hindman.
My name is Eric Immel.
Hello, my name is Juan Ruiz.
My name is Rahul.
I'm a freshman. My name is Monica.
My name is Adriana Julia Siluch.
Hi, my name is Brandy Bates.
I'm Father Mike Caranzini.
I think the biggest thing I always hear about millennials is like, oh, you guys are so different from the previous generation.
Just when I think about millennials, like, I don't know why I think about Miley Cyrus.
You party harder as well as work harder. We never had people really making such strong efforts to get every ounce out of life as the millennials.
The whole discussion about millennials in the church is one it's very funny to me in the best way that millennials would come up with. Which it's been encouraged by us, but it's interesting that we would try to analyze an entire generation before we've really come of age.
But I think that they are probably the most educated group. They're the most international. I think that they will compose about half of the workplace in 2020. And so I think that some people have criticized their work ethic, but I think that they have a better sense of life, that there's more to life than just work. And I think that's a nice balanced approach that's refreshing. I think that they are no different than any generation.
I was born in 1982, so I'm like on the very front end. I didn't get a cell phone until I was a senior in college, but I still, feel like a millennial. So what are some things I hear about millennials? I don't exactly identify with all of them. Millennials are incredibly anxious and fast-paced and hungry for information at a moment's notice. They want to be connected to people and things and ideas instantaneously.
We're in this kind of like routine of always being on the run. Like when I run around campus, I see people on their phones all the time, myself included, people with their headphones in, people needing to go to going to all the different places and meetings that they need to go to, and not really stopping and acknowledging what's happening around them. I see it even in the classroom when people are on their laptops and not listening to the professors. I feel like we have a really difficult time being present to what's happening around us, and we lose the ability to really be present to what's happening and acknowledge what's happening in like a larger scale. Where am I seeing God? Where am I seeing faith in my day-to-day activities?
And then I think the biggest thing, I'm sure you'll hear this from everyone, is just the role technology plays in your lives and social media. You have access to I didn't grow up with the internet. We got the internet when I was in high school. So I remember going to my friend's house to log into AOL and hearing that, like that whole thing to log into AOL online. And it was so cool at the time. But I didn't have a cell phone until I was done with college. So the opportunity to text people, Facebook, seeing like the comments on articles online. Like I used to read articles in magazines, like everything's online now. And so like don't feed the troll, right? Like you get aware of all of the comments like can suck you in. And I think it polarizes us. And I think that's been one of the impacts of technology, not necessarily millennials, but it's the world millennials have come into.
People will say that the millennial generation is an overcommitted generation, and I sometimes wonder if we don't have that slightly wrong. I think that we are an overprogrammed generation, perhaps, but not overcommitted. In fact, I would say overprogrammed and undercommitted.
I think we have an expectation of us more and more to be constantly productive. And I've had the pressure from my parents for it all my life, I think, to be getting as much done as I can and fitting everything into one day, be as busy as you can. It's really encouraged in our generation to be jam-packed busy, and if you can fit one more thing, you're going to fit one more thing, and if you're not, then it's kind of frowned upon.
I feel that I need that time to kind of understand myself and know myself better. But to older generations, such as my parents or even my brother who is in his 30s, we are considered as a generation of slackers. We are kind of a little bit lazy. We need more time for fun. It
is often hurtful because they are saying that I don't appreciate my opportunities, that I expect things to be handed to me, that I am pretentious or idealistic and I can't compromise in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's untrue.
Maybe people say that because of the whole media thing, like we are on the phones and stuff, but I don't think we're lazy. I think we're creative. I think we're a creative generation.
I believe that even you know, all that negativity which is drawn towards us, and you know, that judgment, I believe that our generation has a lot to offer, but it's just a matter of time for us to actually explore that deepness within us.
I think because we have our ideals and we hold on to them, that allows for us to have changes. And those changes are important because we can't have this stillness within Catholicism.
I think the millennial generation is far. I read an article once, I'm sorry, I read a lot of articles, that talked about how this generation is one of the next great generations, how there is a greater focus on service and giving back to the community much more than the previous generations before them. It's not unusual to meet someone who does some kind of community service. I think when I was applying for college, it was unusual if someone had done some kind of service in high school, and now you'll be hard-pressed to find people who didn't do service when they were in high school.
I think that this generation is keenly aware of the risks that can happen when you put yourself out there for the wrong things or things don't go quite the way they had planned.
The young church is far more aware and actively engaging in social justice and connecting their faith to working with people on the margins and people with different identities that maybe haven't been as well celebrated within our communities. So I think that's one thing. I think that's a really positive thing, and I have seen that to be true in the students that I've worked with, both here at the high school level and other parts of the country.
They have this deep hunger, I think, for community and for relationship, and I think that is one of the most defining traits of the millennial generation.
There is an intensity, a desire, a passion for wanting to do something with one's life that is more intense now. A lot less laissez-faire attitude, see what might happen, follow my, develop my career as opportunity comes along. There's much more of a grab and take hold in the millennials than I've seen in previous generations.
Having a unique opportunity to see where there are wounds, to see where there's healing needed.
Standing out and having to answer those tough questions. Facing those questions that in the past people had tended to avoid, like the big picture questions, the ones that are in the news nowadays. And I think that now we, as millennials, we have to address that in our daily life and in our interactions with other people, versus before you could just go with the crowd. Now Catholicism is not really going with the crowd, it's more standing out and having to answer those tough questions.
I think it means a little bit of balancing. Sometimes those cultures or those communities can seem to pull in different directions.
It means being judged a lot by my peers. There are moments where they look at me like, why are you a Catholic? Catholicism has no relation to our world today, and I have faith, which is the reason why I'm a Catholic. I'm Christian because I want to serve others and do social justice, and I think Catholicism is a great platform for that.
Even though Catholicism is a very rich and old tradition, it's still changing time by time, but so are the generations. And I think Catholicism changing with the generation makes for an interesting combination of reality, life, and how people practice their faith. And who knows, maybe the generation after the millennials, they'll have a completely different perspective on Catholicism by then.
This is the time of my life and a lot of young people's lives, young adults, that we have to discern if our faith that we were raised with or not raised with is something that we want to continue with or start with.
I do think it's super important, even though it's maybe not in vogue among our generation. I think it's super important as Catholics to believe that there's something objectively true and good about the world. I don't think that needs to come in a way that's closed-minded toward other people. But I think it's something deeply Christian to understand that there's a direction to life, which is through the death of Jesus toward the resurrection, and that there is a God who loves and draws each of us into life and relationship. And maybe just the one other thing is I've found in my experience, I'm usually being most true to myself as a millennial and a Catholic when I'm not falling on either of those extremes and maybe even offending everybody. So.
I do think there are some challenges to anyone trying to live Catholic faith in contemporary postmodern Western culture. We live in an age that is highly skeptical of institutions in general, and particularly the Catholic Church. And in the time that most millennials have come of age, the Catholic Church has had some really difficult things that it's navigated, most notably the sexual abuse crisis, which is an event that has really shaken our faith in the institution that is supposed to give us faith.
I definitely have friends that I feel like I can openly talk about God about, and I definitely have friends that I feel like if I bring it up, they'll immediately try and or they'll do this to me. And I'm definitely aware of it, because sometimes I feel like people our age, when they hear that you're a faith, think that you're ignorant and that you don't know anything and that you're wrong, and that you need to be educated, and are very surprised when you can talk openly about faith without judgment.
To be Catholic is to follow Jesus, and if I do that, I will risk everything. Everything is a cost. Everything is at stake, because that really is the legacy that we seek to leave: a life of gospel love and a life that honors and follows the crucified Christ.
Part of it includes kind of a more pious answer of just the difficulty of living out what I think it truly is to be a Catholic, and the idea of loving others, loving your enemies, or those, if you have them, the enemies you may or may not have. So the demandingness of what we're actually called to, especially as a Jesuit, trying to live a very particular way as a Catholic, and finding that while I'm really inspired by someone like Pope Francis or someone like Mother Teresa, I find actually responding to people the way that they do, that Mother Teresa did and the way that Pope Francis does, is incredibly difficult. To actually be that loving, to really try to be merciful like the church is, he wants the church to be merciful, is really difficult. So in a pious sense, it's really difficult to just be Catholic in the sense of living up to the ideal.
You should try it. That is, you should try faith. Try it out. It's complex. It's demanding. It'll take a commitment, but it's a community.
Is to pay attention to the movements God has in your life. I think we're trying to figure out how to fit things into a tweet, or how to text someone really quickly, savor things. I mean, it's the examine, it's Ignatian spirituality. How are we savoring the graces that we are receiving? Because the millennials are not receiving more or less grace than God has offered previous generations.
The challenge is to think creatively. When you think about, every person is wonderful, and don't let anyone tell you that you're not.
The church has always been a big tent church. It takes all kinds, it takes all ages, it takes people from every corner of this planet. And I think for the good and the health of the church, we need millennials to be involved, to be engaged, to bring their gifts to this messy, complicated enterprise that we call the Catholic faith. The thing I want to most say to millennials is, don't be afraid.
Don't lose hope when people say that they don't agree with you. And also, don't be afraid to breach those conversation topics, because I can't tell you how many times I've talked to someone who wasn't of faith, and then they were surprised that I was the way I was with my faith.
Don't be afraid of what you have to offer to the church. Don't be afraid of yourself and your capabilities. Don't be afraid to take risks, to commit yourself, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and to explore what it is that the church has to offer you and what it is that you have to offer to the church.
Find silence. Find a way to find silence.
Find out who Jesus is and establish a relationship with him. And I think that's the bedrock of all. It comes back to that. A relationship with God is a relationship.
So I love Millennials. I love Millennials. We love you. Don't leave the church. Stay. We love you.